Ireland is not a place known for its dangerous wildlife, with the most dangerous animal in all of Ireland being cows. But what if I told you that otters the size of tigers were said to call the Loughs of Ireland home, and one fatality even being attributed to one, along with photographic evidence from as recent as 2014? Welcome to Cryptid Corner, the series All Things Cryptids, and today we're going to look into the Dobhar-chú. The Dobhar-chú, whose name translates to otter, also known as the water dog or the king otter, is a massive otter which is said to call Ireland's freshwaters home. The largest known otter in the region is the Eurasian otter that can boast lengths of up to 4.2 feet in length, including their tails. But the Dobhar-chú dwarfs them with lengths around 10 to 15 feet long, standing up to 2.5 feet high at the shoulders. The description of the Dobhar-chú tends to vary very slightly, but at its core it's described as a massive otter with a large temper. Older depictions of the otter basically describe it as having white fur with black tipped ears and a black cross-like pattern that runs up the creature's back, while modern reports tend to describe them as just a darker and larger otter. And in some of these older depictions, it is said to have more dog-like characteristics, like somewhat of a greyhound body appearance. Mentions of the Dobhar-chú go as far back as 1684, told in the book Roderick O'Flaherty's A Description of West Connaught, which claimed that it was an immense yet rare white-faced otter that is sought after for its pelt, which is said to bring victory to any battle. The next and likely the most well-known Dobhar-chú story dates back to 1722, when a woman named Grace Connolly had went to bathe in the Lough alone. But eventually, her husband Terence would grow worried with her being out so late, and upon going down to the loch to investigate, he would be met with a horrifying scene: a large Dobhar-chú resting atop the corpse of his dear wife. Terence ran to grab his knife, and like an absolute mad lad, he would do in the beast, but with the monster's dying breath, it cried out for help, and a second Dobhar-chú came rushing in to avenge its fallen comrade, causing Terence to flee on horseback with the otter in pursuit. But in the end, Terence would bring down the second otter just like the first. In Conwell's cemetery in Glenade, the headstones of Grace and Terence can be found, with Grace's depicting a canine-looking figure being stuck in the neck with a knife, and Terence's showing him riding a horse with knife in hand. On May 1st, 1968, near Shraheens Lough, John Cooney and Michael McNulty would be driving home when at around 10 p.m. a large creature, 10 feet long, would run across the road ahead of them. The creature initially was dark brown to black in coloration, with a snouted head, a long neck, and robust limbs and tail. Although later, John would change this description to match a theropod dinosaur. But despite that, a team named Gay Deaver would spot a similar creature in the area a few weeks later, but adding the detail that it hopped around like a kangaroo. During the turn of the century, Patrick Sullivan would be driving down N65, a road which passes by both Loch Derg and Loch Rhea, when he would spot an otter, but larger and darker than the typical. In 2003, artist Sean Corcoran and his wife would spot a Dobhar-chú on Omey Island, claiming it to have been a large dark otter, equipped with webbed feet. And the image, or perhaps images you were looking at, were actually his sketch of the creature. And in 2014, when the Shannon and Fergus estuaries had flooded, a resident of Clonagh named Joan White had observed a very large otter gnawing away at what she believed to be a pipe, which can be pretty big. Jean had rushed to get her camera, and as she returned to the scene, she took one of the best photographs in cryptozoology, very clearly showing a large otter with a robust upper jaw enjoying a fish, being dubbed by locals as the Clonagh Monster. And man, I just gotta appreciate this. It's a cryptid image, but it's not blurry as all sin, it's not, all messed up, it's just a big ol' otter enjoying a big ol' fish. So, with several sightings, photographs, and unfortunately a death spanning hundreds of years of Irish history, what's the deal with these big ol' otters? Otters have been known to reach quite large sizes, with giant otters of the Amazon reaching up to 6 feet in length and living in groups of up to 20 otters. And these otters can cause some absolute mayhem, eating piranhas, shellfish, and sometimes even young caimans. And on occasion, these otters will even get bold enough to attack people. But the giant otters of the Amazon aren't the only giant otters, as the Megalonhydrus barbaricana of Pleistocene Sardinia had exceeded lengths of 6 feet 6 inches long and potentially weighed as much as 220 pounds, where they would have preyed on the rabbit-sized pikas, the fun-sized elephants, and the many other just absolutely wild and unique animals that inhabited Pleistocene Sardinia. But living in Pleistocene Africa over 2 million years ago and sharing territory with our ancient ancestors in modern day Ethiopia was the largest otter of all time, the Enhydrion dikike. Now, these otters, which are often referred to as the bear otters, were ginormous, clocking in at 10 feet long and weighing as much as 440 pounds, larger than lions. And what made them even more terrifying was that they were more suited to hunting on land, and Australopithecus could have even been on their menus. Other giant otter fossils have been found across the world. This is just kind of like the honorary mentions, showing that if you give otters enough food and space, they will go sicko mode. And if you know how evil sea otters can get, well, just be lucky a lion-sized otter didn't get their paws on you. A theory as to why the Dobhar-chú hasn't been formally discovered could be that these otters don't live in a singular place, instead migrating across Ireland. Although otters typically don't migrate huge distances, river otter territories can range from 3 miles to 30 square miles, and giant river otters will often travel in order to follow preferred fish migrations. Given a significant portion of Ireland's uninhabited territories are bogs, the Dobhar-chú could seek refuge in the marshland, occasionally alternating to rivers and lochs the same way that standard river otters do. Now, looking at our best piece of evidence in the 2014 photo, this otter doesn't seem too different from a Eurasian otter at first. But when looking closer, especially at the upper jaw, it is remarkably robust. And taking into account that this fish was said to be a northern pike, and the average length of a pike could be about 22 inches with a weight of 17 pounds, this otter would have to be far larger and stronger than your typical Eurasian otter. Crash Course Cryptozoology does a really good video on this photo in particular, so definitely check it out if you want to learn more about the history and an analysis of this photo. But overall, I feel like the Dobhar-chú being an undescribed giant otter makes a lot of sense, perhaps a relative of the Eurasian otter or something else entirely. The only problem that I really have is that I feel more people would have ran into them, but I mean, otters can be pretty reclusive, and if they are hiding away at these bogs, I could see why they haven't gone discovered so long. And so, the Dobhar-chú of Irish legend may just be a large undiscovered species of otter, running from bog to log. From the headstone in Glenade to the photo in Clennig, and all the encounters in between, there is a substantial amount of evidence pointing towards this being the case. Not often is a cryptid tied to a death, and probably just as rare is there being photographic evidence of said cryptid that isn't blurry as sin. So perhaps the last destination for giant otters isn't the waterways of the Amazon, and instead, the other end of the rainbow lands in the Loughs of Ireland, where leprechaun gold is guarded by lion-sized otters. And that is going to do it for the Dobhar-chú. This was a very interesting one to look into, and it's been a while since we've seen one that's objectively like, yeah, this one seems really, really plausible. I think that it definitely is possible for a very rare species of giant otter to be living out, these bogs in Ireland. And there's many other cryptids that tend to get identified as sort of an otter in appearance. A lot of people go for the plesiosaur-like look, but Perhaps other cryptids could just be these giant things like the water horses, the kelpies, weird stuff like that. But what do you think about it? Do you think that with all of this that the Dobhar-chú really is out there? Do you think it's some BS and you think this picture is just an otter and I'm looking into it a little too hard? Make sure to let me know in the comments down below. I always love to see what y'all have to say about it, you know, because this is pretty cool to look into. I know we just covered an Irish cryptid, but then I was reminded of this one, right? This one, I was reminded of it long ago. I think the recommendation, the initial one, might have been so old, it might have been on the oil pit squid video, but I just forgot about it, and I was reminded recently, and I was like, oh my god, I need to talk about this. And I was going to do it for Monday's video, but then I was like, we just did an Irish cryptid, so I'll just do the saber-toothed tiger. I know y'all like that one, so... but yeah, though, if you like this video, make sure to leave a like. If you like this content, make sure to subscribe and ring that bell so you get notified whenever a new Cryptid Corner comes out. But if you really want to be above the curve, if you want to beat the ground sloth mafia to the punch, well, go ahead and become a member where you get early access to videos and priority recommendations so that your recommendation becomes the next Cryptid Corner. But you're a real one regardless, and I love seeing your recommendations outside of that. And if you've been hearing thunder in the background, that is because it is about to storm outside, and it's been thundering for the past, 5 minutes. So you probably heard Low Tier God in the background. Just forget about that. But anyways, I'm not going to keep you much longer. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.